in order for the crypto assets and valuations to go up, it doesn't require that much capital, right? So I've seen some estimates where with Bitcoin being a $2 trillion asset, an injection of sometimes somewhere between 10 to 30 billion alone, maybe 50 billion. So 2 to 3% of the entire supply ends up pushing the price up dramatically because a lot of the Bitcoin that's there is not available for sale. People are holding that and hodling.
You're watching CapitalCosm. My name is Danny. It is August 22nd, 2025. And my guest today is the CEO of BNB Network Company, ticker symbol BNC on the NASDAQ. It is David Namdar on the channel for the first time. David, thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Danny.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on, David. As you well know, and as many of my audience well knows, we don't cover much crypto on this channel. So I think there's some interesting things going on nonetheless. And there's a certain trend that's been unfolding recently that I think even if you aren't a big crypto enthusiast, you should at the very minimum be aware of what's going on, just so because crypto has become a large part of the market. It's no longer, off in the corner, just doing its thing. It has become a chunk of the market. So David, I want to start things off with you just really quick. I asked this to all my guests, just a really quick background, brief intro on your journey up until this point, and then talk us through what are some of the key trends that you think investors should be aware of when it comes to the crypto market. And let's take it away.
Sure, absolutely. So my journey, I started off at working in the finance industry at UBS out in Hong Kong, and then at Millennium in New York, which was one of the biggest hedge funds. I was covering initially the Asian markets and then almost global markets, trading equities and FX and derivatives in almost every market around the world. And I was fortunate that from my time in Asia, I kind of opened my eyes to different currencies. And so when Bitcoin was first introduced, I just really liked the idea of a currency born from the internet. And so I saw that it was something that really had potential. I liked a lot of the monetary aspects of it. And so I left my job at the hedge fund and started my first company in the space called SolidX Partners. That was back in 2014. And essentially what it was just a niche bank focused on introducing crypto to the capital markets. And one of the first things we tried to do, and this is back in 2014, was try to do a Bitcoin ETF. So I'm sure many people have heard recently about Bitcoin ETFs in the last year or two, and now a number of different crypto assets that people are trying to do ETFs on. Well, I wasn't the first. Myself and my team, we were the second ones to try to do it right after the Winklevoss twins. They were early friends of mine who tried to do it about a week or two before we submitted our ETF application. And then, but with a lot of things in life, we were too early. Then a couple of years later, I partnered with this guy, Mike Novogratz, who was outside of Fortress, and went into his family office and planted the seeds to launch a hedge fund and a business together, and then to take it public. And that became known as Galaxy Digital. That's now an $8 billion public company, and has been really one of the most important kind of companies in helping bridge institutional and kind of the crypto world together by really being and also helping a lot of retail kind of get exposure to the space as well. And then the last couple of years, I've been investing in the space broadly into projects directly as a VC, as an angel investor. I've advised an endless amount of projects. I had a crypto hedge fund for a couple of years. And then I've really helped a lot of people get into the space. And that's been a matter of great pride for me, really just helping a lot of different people get into the space and in a way to protect them from some of the hype and some of the nonsense that that people get drawn into in each crypto cycle. And so now in this latest cycle, I've been very active and excited to be investing into a lot of public companies in the crypto space and this new wave of digital asset treasuries that I can expand on. And so through this process, I'm very excited actually for the first time to be the CEO of a company, and that's the BNB Network Company. And I just think it's one of the most phenomenal opportunities I've seen in my entire time in my crypto journey.
Yeah. So, what are you seeing out there? Because again, even if you're from the audience standpoint, even if you're not like a big crypto enthusiast, there are some major developments going on, and they're happening kind of hidden. They're kind of they're not on the radar screen of a lot of people out there. But you and I talked about this before we hit record. Go ahead and unravel some of the key things that are ongoing. You mentioned the treasuries aspect. Go ahead and unpack that.
Sure. And I think a lot of this, it was really kicked off in the last year as the regulatory environment finally in the US has been welcoming and positive for crypto. I actually remember when I first started off, one of the things that, brought me a lot of, and a lot of people in the industry, a ton of pain was the New York bit license, which really delayed. It was one of the worst pieces of regulation for the crypto industry and pushed a lot of innovation outside of New York. Now, starting off with this positive regulatory environment where the US finally has politicians that are actively pushing to have sensible regulation around crypto and to allow people to who are involved in the crypto industry to have bank accounts, to allow crypto companies to go public and not try to push them overseas. And so that's really kicked off this latest wave. Now, stepping back, and it was actually just the 5-year anniversary, who hopefully a number of you are familiar with, Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor was an entrepreneur in the tech world for the last couple of decades. And 5 years ago, he decided to take the cash that was sitting on his company's balance sheet and buy Bitcoin with it. He fought with the board, but as soon as he brought it up, he met with a ton of positive enthusiasm from his retail investors and actually all of his shareholders. And now through that process, over the last 5 years, he's managed to accumulate over $70 to $80 billion worth of Bitcoin, and his stock and company is valued well over $100 billion today. So in his footsteps, there have now been a number of kind of copycats or people that have taken that strategy and because of how successful he's been in accumulating Bitcoin onto his balance sheet and done it for a number of other Bitcoin companies and a number of other kind of what I consider important crypto assets. And so we've seen in the last couple of months, there is a company called Nakamoto, which was ticker was Kindly MD, and they've rebranded it. And that was started by a close friend of mine, David Bailey. And through that process, he has been actively seeding a number of other crypto treasury companies around the world, one of the most successful being MetaPlanet in Japan. And we've also seen then a wave of some non-Bitcoin ones, as I mentioned. And so there have been a couple of different Ethereum treasuries that have gained traction, where I think between the 2 or 3 major ones, between SharpLink and Bitmine, BMNR, they've managed to accumulate over $5 to $8 billion worth of Ethereum already. Well, I launched BNB Network Company because I think that this is the most important crypto asset that the market is missing out on and fundamentally underpricing today. And so we launched it to accumulate BNB. Now, what BNB is, it's the coin that was associated with or started by Binance and the founders there. And over the last 8 years, they've managed to build perhaps the most thriving ecosystem in the entire crypto space. And it's backed by the most important company in the entire crypto space. A lot of people in the West aren't that familiar with Binance because Binance was pushed out of the US market and hasn't been involved in the US market recently. And hopefully they'll return soon enough and people will be more familiar with it. The US exchanges, crypto exchanges that people are familiar with today, most notably Coinbase, Gemini, and Kraken, and I know the founders well of each of them. Coinbase is public today and is valued around 100 billion. Kraken and Gemini are likely valued around 10 to 20 billion, maybe 30 billion at the high end. Binance is 5 to 7 times larger than Coinbase. If Binance was publicly listed today as a crypto exchange, it might be worth $500 to $700 billion, and it very likely would be the first $1 trillion company in the crypto space. Now, Binance and the founders there are the ones who started BNB chain a number of years ago. And the key tie-up there is that BNB has a massive utility on Binance where users are able to use it to get reduced trading fees and a number of other benefits on the exchange. So in some ways, BNB is actually the most widely used cryptocurrency today, because Binance has 290 million users, and I've seen estimates that over 90% of those users use BNB in order to get trading fees and other benefits. And so in my mind, when I look at all the other crypto assets and the trend of kind of more recently, we've seen a lot of activity and speculation around stable coins and the Genius Act, which is something you probably be hearing about quite regularly. And so it's important, I think, that people get excited about one thing, and this happens very, very often in the crypto space, but they miss out on where the real kind of innovation and activity are.
Yeah, it's fascinating seeing all this develop, but with crypto, you do see these bull rallies happen once every 4 years. It corresponds to the halving cycle, and typically correlate. Bitcoin is the front runner in all this. Here's a Bitcoin chart to kind of illustrate what I'm referring to. 4 years ago, we had a top at around November of 2021. 4 years before that, the top was on December of 17. 4 years before that, November of 2013. So with this kind of in view, David, how are you? I mean, how do you kind of forecast Binance Coin's projection moving forward, even if we're kind of getting a little late in this halving cycle? Are we? Is that something to kind of grapple with as well?
Sure. Now, actually, one of the things that's great, if you could bring up the chart of BNB as well, that since its introduction 8 years ago, BNB might be the only, if not one of just a couple of assets that have actually outperformed Bitcoin. And even in the past couple of weeks, as investors naturally get kind of skittish in the summertime and start to worry on any pullback, as Bitcoin had pulled back 5 or 10%, BNB had made new highs over the past week. And I think two different days this week, it had made new highs. And so for me, it's actually given me more and more confidence. I've been telling people recently that even since starting this company, as I see and I'm living and breathing the BNB kind of supply and demand dynamics and the ecosystem and understanding everything that's going on, I have more conviction today than I've had at any point before in my crypto journey that BNB is going to continue to perform well and also outperform Bitcoin on a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year view. And so, I think it's important to have pay attention to these cycles, but it's also important to kind of zoom out and make investments kind of for the medium and long term, because that's where the most of the benefit, most of the gains in crypto have come.
Yeah, so we've got the BNB price here in white, and then we've got Bitcoin here denoted by the red and green candlesticks. And yeah, I mean, on a 1 year basis, pretty strong outperformance of Bitcoin. Even, it depends on when you scroll back, but from the last halving period up until today, there's been a massive outperformance relative to Bitcoin. So just to kind of understand what's going on here more clearly, BNB is a top 5 crypto coin, as you can see on Coinbase, bigger than Solana on a market cap basis.
We don't usually count Tether because Tether is just a stable coin.
Gotcha. So in that case, number 4.
That's right.
Bigger than Solana, bigger than USDC, Dogecoin, etc. But it's much more difficult to find a broker to buy this coin on. Hence, this is where you guys come in at BNB Network Company, more particular BNC on the NASDAQ. So in much the same way that Michael Saylor was able to utilize Bitcoin into his treasury and effectively acquire strong correlation to that asset onto his stock price. You guys are doing the same thing with BNB, which is not a what coin. It's not a shit coin. It's a top 4 crypto coin. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the way I think about it is everybody should have exposure to crypto. Everyone should have exposure to the best crypto assets. And I think really in general, I don't like to go very far down the list that you're showing there. I think owning BNB tokens gives you spot exposure, same way owning Bitcoin does. But as we've seen during a number of periods, strong teams like MicroStrategy and MetaPlanet and what we've put together at BNB Network Company, when you are running this digital asset treasury strategy, you have the chance to really outperform the underlying asset because the goal of the company is to compound growth and accumulate more of the underlying asset. So it's different than having just spot exposure or owning it through an ETF. Here, we're doing a number of different things in order to accomplish accumulation of the underlying asset. And I think we're really at the beginning of that for BNB. We've seen it happen in Bitcoin. We've seen it happen in Ethereum. And that's led to, Ethereum has had a massive outperformance in the last couple months against Bitcoin. And people were kind of waiting for that to happen and for Ethereum to wake up. And even now, some people are still making the bet that Ethereum will continue to outperform Bitcoin from here. But Ethereum is already a $500 billion asset. Today, BNB is around 125 billion. So in my mind, I think all of them continue to grow, but I would much rather own BNB at 125 billion and the price of around 880 today than I would Ethereum at close to 5,000 and 500 billion market cap.
Yeah, because if for a doubling from here, you would require about 120 plus $1 billion of capital to be injected into the asset. On the part of Ethereum, it's $500 billion plus. On the part of Bitcoin, it's $2.3 trillion plus. But go ahead. I see you're about to say something.
I would just say one correction there. So, because people do a lot of analysis on this, that in order for the crypto assets and valuations to go up, it doesn't require that much capital, right? So I've seen some estimates where with Bitcoin being a $2 trillion asset, an injection of sometimes somewhere between 10 to 30 billion alone, maybe 50 billion. So 2 to 3% of the entire supply ends up pushing the price up dramatically because a lot of the Bitcoin that's there is not available for sale. People are holding that and hodling. Right? I know a lot of people that wouldn't sell most of their Bitcoins for less than $1 million today. Right? So the current price is 115,000, but there's a lot of people that have a ton of conviction that are holding it for the long term, if not with the intention to hold it forever. And so I think BNB has a very similar dynamic to it, where the people who've held on to it for this long, a lot of them are also planning to hold it for a long time, if not forever, because they see this as, one of the best ways I've heard it framed is that, and how I think about it is that Bitcoin is digital gold. And more, despite all the criticisms, the Peter Schiffs of the world, everybody who's believed in Bitcoin has been right. And Peter Schiff has been wrong this whole time. Ethereum is digital oil, okay? And it's thought of more as a commodity kind of fueling how a lot of the network works. Well, BNB has some similarities to Ethereum, but it's also this digital infrastructure and almost like equity in the entire crypto ecosystem and the entire rails that all of Web3 run on. All of the future of the internet, right, may run on BNB over Ethereum, because every app, every transaction, even with Ethereum, people get very excited about stable coins. Well, the activity of stable coins is actually higher in a lot of metrics on BNB chain than on Ethereum, and it's cheaper. Although the main thing is that a lot of that activity is happening outside of the US, so people in the US aren't really picking up on it.
It sounds like if Bitcoin is digital gold and Ethereum is digital oil, then from the sounds of it, BNB would be something like digital copper or digital silver due to their like industrial nature, because so much of industry runs on copper production and things like that. Would that be accurate?
Maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's copper, it's earth, it's coal, silver, everything, aluminum, all the ingredients.
Interesting. So I know you just said that a lot of people are, hodling Binance coin. But at the same time, is that the most common view of it, or are most investors and traders are they just trading in and out? Or is there is there a big ethos to hodl Binance coin as opposed to come in and out, just swing trade it like you see with so many other altcoins like Dogecoin? People are just trying to profit off of it, and it's not really a buy and hold type of strategy.
Yeah, I think, and this is where, like, as you mentioned, some of the other assets earlier, like a Solana or now Dogecoin, I think very clearly that BNB and a lot of people, when they get deeper into the whole BNB ecosystem and just how thriving it is outside of Binance and just its utility, because of the ties to Binance and how many people hold it there, trading has actually been, in some regards, the number one app or the biggest killer app of crypto. And so Binance has owned the largest market, that has the largest user base and the largest users of BNB because of that. So inherently, a lot of people that are traders in the market have been using and trading BNB. Now, that being said, it actually has, I believe, lower volatility than Ethereum and a couple of other assets, even the smaller assets, because it has been held by so many and people aren't trading around it as much and trying to trade the levels. Now, one of the things I love about crypto is when people are worried about volatility. Well, when you have an asset that's growing tremendously, volatility is a great thing. You want higher volatility, actually. And even, I've invested before in MicroStrategy, some of these other treasury companies, some of the more recent ones. Volatility is a great thing that actually helps you kind of fuel growth to your stock and fuel growth to, when you see volatility in the underlying asset. So I actually look forward to having a lot more volatility ahead both for public equities and also in the underlying crypto assets. Now, I think with BNB, one of the things really is, like, I bring up sometimes when I think about just where this can go in the future, that it's significantly cheaper to use BNB than it is Ethereum and Bitcoin and some of the other crypto assets. And while Ethereum, people have gotten behind this stablecoin theme, as I've mentioned, I've been saying BNB might be the theme of the future. It might be the theme, and the chain for AI, for robotics, for a lot of, micro payments. When we get into the trillions of payments, BNB might be the best chain and crypto asset for that infrastructure to live on.
Is there any other coin that you would view as a competitor to BNB that's kind of doing something similar to what BNB coin is doing?
There's coins that people think are similar or competitive in some aspects. Tron is competitive for some mind share because I think they do a very loud job of marketing and highlighting what they're doing. And Solana has managed to kind of get the wave of people's enthusiasm and mind share because it's been the chain where memes and meme coins have lived on the most. And Ethereum now is capturing kind of a lot of the corporate and institutional mind share. And so I think BNB, and what really attracts me to it, is that it just continues to be overlooked. And so even sometimes I see lists of when people are talking about the important crypto assets or talking about the drivers in the market, and they mention Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and they start to mention a number of the smaller ones, even on some dashboards and other things. And it's amazing to me how people could overlook this. One other thing I'd say to step back is, imagine if, the largest company in the world, right, in any particular sector, wasn't in the US. So imagine if Apple, Google, Facebook were operating in their respective sectors, but they were available in almost every country in the world except the US. And there was no way for US investors to invest in it, right? That's a little bit like what's happening here, where we have potentially the biggest company in the entire crypto space, Binance, available outside of the US only, and US investors may never have a chance to invest in Binance equity. So BNB, which, one of the best ways, the founder of Binance, I heard him phrase it like this before, where Binance is actively contributing to drive value to BNB chain. So they're not tied together. There's no direct revenue link, But the activity that happens on Binance and all the activity that happens on BNB chain provides and contributes value and to growing the value and fundamental value of BNB. And so to me, that combination and all the dynamics that it has, that's why I say, like, the more I dive into it, the more I get confident that BNB will outperform, Bitcoin and likely all of the other crypto assets. And yeah, and in my mind, I do think, like I said, Bitcoin, Ethereum, a lot of the best crypto assets will grow, but in my mind, there's no way that BNB is not a $1 or $2 trillion asset in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, I don't cover too much crypto, if any at all. But when you and I and your team got connected a while back, we talked about doing an interview. I don't always say yes to every interview request that comes my way, but I truly did find something interesting in this particular proposition, like this, the value prop behind BNB. And so I at the very minimum, I feel like this is something people should have on their radar screen and continue monitoring, if not consider taking a step further after doing their due diligence and talking to their financial advisor, of course. But it's a very fascinating value prop. And, whether we like crypto or Bitcoin or whatever or not, it's undeniable. It's here to stay, guys. You've got to have a foot in the door, at least in terms of your mental exposure to this stuff, because so much of the world economy is becoming, or in world market is becoming tied. It's all becoming symbiotic with the crypto industry and crypto market. So that's what I feel. David, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap things up here?
Sure. Danny, I appreciate what you just said, and I think you nailed it. Like, for me, I really try to just, I've been living and breathing crypto now for 12 or 13 years, and I've been through a number of cycles. And so I try to, urge people to understand it and really get excited about what's going on, because it just, to me, it's like one of the most exciting things I've seen in the world. We're living through, this transformation of financial markets, and we're living through one of the greatest wealth transformations in history, where now the capital markets and crypto markets are converging, and we're seeing, opportunities to invest into and get exposure to crypto assets through public market vehicles like MicroStrategy, like BNC, and I'm sure we'll see a number of others. And we're also seeing the public markets converge with crypto and try to list tokenized stocks on some of these crypto assets. And so, to me, I think I'm just continue to be incredibly excited about the future. Bitcoin, like, in my mind, when I ask people and think about, all right, if you could only hold one or two assets for the next 5 or 10 years, like, almost everybody I talk to today mentions Bitcoin as one of those assets. Mm-hmm. And so part of the reason why I'm running and building BNC is to help people realize that BNB and BNC should be another one of those assets.
Just out of curiosity, outside of BNB, like, if you had to hold, let's say you had to hold 3 and BNB was one of them, what would be the other 2?
It's a great question. So if I go further down the list, there's a couple of assets that I particularly like, that I think have strong user bases behind them, or just strong potential. I think Ton is one of them, which is tied to the Telegram network, which has a great story behind it. WorldCoin is another, just because I think it has a great founding team there. And then, and just the potential with Sam Altman's involvement and what OpenAI is doing. And then Tau is another recent one, which kind of also it's focused on AI. So it also is kind of one of the chains of the future, potentially.
I see. Very interesting stuff here, David. Go ahead and plug, your socials or any websites you want to plug. So the floor is yours.
Feel free to follow me on Twitter. It's at Namdar, and the company is at BNB Network Co. And this has been absolutely great, and look forward to coming on in the future, and hopefully some of these predictions have been right, and been able to help your viewers manage to catch part of this incredible wave in the crypto space.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I'll have my eye on for sure moving forward. So I really appreciate your time here, David. Really enjoyed this one as well. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, drop us a like and write "Go David Go" in the comments section if you agreed or disagreed, do let me know. I do, in fact, read the comments, good or bad. So let me know your thoughts. And I will reply to a couple of these comments. So let me know what you guys think. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. Liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all the YouTube stuff goes a long way in helping push this video in the algorithm, as well as this channel. So much appreciated for all of your help there. And then finally, check us out on Substack at capitalcosm.substack.com for all of my videos, early, ad-free, and uncensored for the ones that warranted. So with all that said, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you later.